Welcome, everyone. My name is April Smith. I'm the Education Coordinator at NAFA. Welcome to the Sustainable Fleet Technology webinar series. Before I turn things over to our moderator, just a few housekeeping notes to review. This session is being recorded, and a copy of that recording will be available to you in the coming days. All participants are muted during the presentation to limit background noise, but we encourage you to ask questions and add comments using the chat feature on the Zoom toolbar. If you do experience any technical difficulties, you can reach out to me through the chat feature. And now to kick things off, it is my pleasure to turn things over to John Bonnet.
Hello, everybody. I'm John Bonnetts. I am a clean transportation project manager with the North Carolina State University Clean Energy Technology Center. It's a pleasure to have you. And I am just so pleased today to have this webinar gathering for this conversation. Mike Duffy from UVA and John Ferguson from City of Durham and Jake Hoyman from Oregon State University. I think it's going to be an excellent conversation. And I slipped up and deleted the actual browser window. So if you'll bear with me just a second, here we go. And I am launching that now. Slideshow. Very good. Yes. And Mike Duffy comes to us from the University of Virginia, and he is effectively the sustainability manager for that university, and he also oversees fleet management for the university. He has a lot of experience and is a frequent contributor to our Sustainable Fleet Technologies Conference and a speaker on webinars, and we're so pleased to have him with us. He is also, I believe, Mike, you were recognized last year or year before by NAFA for your outstanding work in mentorship. Is that the name of the award?
Correct. The NAFA's Green Fleet Award gave me the 2024 Mentor of the Year award.
Fantastic. And John Ferguson comes to us from the City of Durham. He is the Assistant Fleet Manager, Fleet Maintenance Manager for the City of Durham. And the City of Durham was also recently recognized by NAFA as an outstanding sustainable fleet. And John, remind me of the precise award recognition.
We finished 6th overall in the competition, and we also were recognized for our at-home vehicle charging plan that we've implemented.
Yeah, that was 100 Best Fleets, wasn't it? Yeah. And Jake Hoyman is, he's bringing a little bit different perspective because he's the actual farm manager for a research farm that has been utilizing these electric utility vehicles, these utility task vehicles. Sometimes they're called side-by-sides. And Jake's experience is going to be especially interesting to hear from because they've had some challenges, but they've also had some real positive experiences with their vehicle. But before I go further, I do want to mention that we have a whole series of these webinars, and we are ready to announce that next month, November 13th, we will be hosting a webinar on medium and heavy-duty vehicle electrification from 2 to 3:30 p.m. And you can register for that either through the NAFA website or at our website. The URL is featured right there. These slides will be posted both by NAFA and the Clean Tech Center. And as April mentioned, there will be a recording available for future view.
John, I don't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry. We are not seeing your screen right now.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Okay. And so glad you mentioned that. Here we go. Stop share. Share again. All right. Are you seeing that now? Screen sharing paused. I've never encountered that before.
It says you're sharing your screen, but we can't see anything.
Stop share. Now?
Ah, there we go.
Oh, good. Right. Okay, well, let's keep rolling. As I mentioned, we have the November 13th webinar, medium and heavy duty EVs. And there is the website for registering, and all of our future webinars will be listed there. And thanks again to NAFA, North American Fleet Management Association, for their support in outreach and back-end support. Thank you so much, April. So just to touch on the Clean Energy Technology Center, we're an outward-facing agency of the university. We are a public service agency of the university, and our job is to advance a sustainable energy economy by educating, demonstrating, and providing support for clean energy technologies, practices, and policies. I'm privileged to work on the Clean Transportation team. Clean Transportation team's been in business for about 15 or 16 years. And the Clean Tech Center has been in business for about 35 years. I say business generously because we really are a de facto nonprofit organization, truly a public service agency. And we can't do this work without the support of the firsthand experts like Michael Duffy and John Ferguson and Jake Hoyman. We're so grateful for your participation. So here's the obligatory headshot slide. And I think we're just going to dive straight into it with Mike Duffy's presentation. You ready, Mike?
Sure. Good afternoon. Thank you for your interest in this topic. I've worked at the University of Virginia now for a little over 9 years. I've got 35 years experience in fleet management. Sustainable fleet is one of my passions, trying to understand how we can plan for tomorrow and still get our job done for today and wise utilization of resources. There is an Office of Sustainability here on grounds, and I'm not associated with it, but I do work closely with them. And I feel really sold with North Carolina and with John and their agency to reach out to the education side. I've worked in the Department of Engineering for the past 6 years with professors and students on their capstone projects. This year's project is specifically related to this task, where we're going to look at the quantitative results of vehicles that we had that were ICE vehicles, and then what was the benefit that we saw, not only in cost but in emissions, by replacing them with alternative fuel vehicles. And we're going to go all the way down to second by second utilization that we can see available to us from our telematics data. So get with me next year in April when we'll have results of this year's study. Next, please. I started here at the FM facility. Currently we have 311 vehicles in the FM, the facilities management group. And at that time, we did not have a single alternative fuel vehicle. Everything was gas or diesel. We had to start measuring in order to start understanding what was going to happen for us. You can see 2 different vehicles side by side here. The Kubota is a 3-cylinder diesel. The E-Ride Patriots, made in America, made by E-Ride Industries. I found out that the University of North Carolina in Charlotte had some, drove down there to meet with their fleet manager. We had a great conversation with their frontline staff, and they told us that the frontline staff members said that they wish they had had the vehicle 10 years ago. They were that pleased with it. That was enough for us to purchase our first one. And you can see from the notes here on the slide, cost of savings starts about year 8. The reason for the differential is the e-rides were expensive. I think our first one was 30 grand. The Kubota, like the one you're seeing on the left side of the screen there, is about 20 grand at that time. The savings was in the emissions. You can see there's a huge savings there on fuel and the emissions right there. And on the maintenance side, the e-ride shows about 25% of the expense cost that the similar Kubota does over that same year period. So there's a tremendous amount of savings on the Patriot. That particular unit gets brake fluid flushes and tires, wiper blades. We put a set of brakes in as well too. But I mean, again, for context, we take care of about a 3 square mile area. Looking for these alternative fuel, low speed vehicle, that technology is really helpful to maintain the ground. So we're looking at vehicles that travel less. 80% of my vehicles travel less than 275 miles a week. Next, please. Same thing here with the Gator. The 777 was the first one that we bought. There are different configurations that you can get for e-rides. You can get a 2-door, a 4-door. You can get it with a cap on the back as well too. But again, you'll see the same savings across the Kubota or Gator line, the whole side-by-side, whatever you want to call it. And they've proven to be dependable vehicles, and we have 5 of them in our fleet now. There are several other on grounds as well too within different departments. Our fleet's decentralized, so the facilities management fleet operates independently from the athletic fleet, from the health system fleet. There are nearly 800 vehicles on ground. We have 42% of the fleet within facilities. Next. We have tried out the Polaris side by side. We have it's fully electric. It has an enclosed cab. It has a 50-mile range. It's charged with 110-volt power cord, but we did encounter some difficulties. All of those were only available with the AGM batteries. They've proven to be troublesome, and you have to be meticulous in your maintenance. We've added the water kit to all 3 of ours, which allows you to refill all the batteries. And if you don't do the battery maintenance, you're going to have, in my opinion, you're going to have trouble with replacing batteries. That's going to be your most expensive repair that we've encountered. Is we've been able to see between a 2.5 to 3 year lifespan in these batteries. These work perfectly in an area. We had one that for 2 years, all it did was work on one job site where the project manager used it in like a 20-acre area site, and it worked flawlessly there. I just had a conversation today. I'm going to move one of these to a research park. It's never going to get onto a road, but it's going to travel in a research park where there are several facilities, and they just need to go from building to building to be able to do that, to take care of the maintenance needs there. So I look at these really as a niche role where they would fit in to take care of certain roles that you wouldn't necessarily need a traditional vehicle for. Next. This is our first Kinetic that we just got in December of last year. Right out of the gate, we encountered a recall, which we were advised that if we were going to use it to park it outside as it might catch on fire. So it had to go, we did not have it for a week before it had to go back for 2 months for a recall. So we have the crews that use it love it. Again, it's operated in that very limited space. It does have a much better cab defroster than the regular Polaris. We actually supply the other Polaris, which was on the slide before. We provided that operator with a squeegee to clean the dew off the inside of the windshield because it does not have good climate controls. We'll see how it does. The downside to this is this was much more expensive than the standard Polaris because it does have that 14.9 kW lithium battery system. Next. And this one here is going to probably be another case where it's going to just the engineers and or project managers, leads for that will end up using this. And this will be a low-speed vehicle, not a piece of equipment like the Polarises. Sure, you've seen the GEM vehicles. This one we're purchasing, it should be here within the month, is going to replace a 4-door Kubota. And our hope is to allow people to be able to have a conversation. You can't do that inside the Kubotas. And also to get away from the use of diesel. So this will surpass the range of a Polaris. And it's about equal in price to both the E-Ride and to a Kubota with a snowplow or a salt spreader. So that's just a little bit of the history that we've had. The E-Rides we've had for 6 years, and they've been tremendous. We have a plumber that uses one. We have another zone that uses one for carpenters. The Polarises have been used by fire and life safety and by construction grounds maintenance people. Next. I believe that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to copy my email address. I'd be happy to reach out to you, share more about what we're doing here with the UTVs. Thank you, John.
That's terrific. Thank you so much, Mike. Yeah, perhaps during Q&A, we can also go into some of the conversations we had in our prep call about the idea of swapping batteries from the old lead acid to the newer technologies. Let's move straight to John's presentation now. John Ferguson comes to us from City of Durham. John, are you ready to dive in?
Yeah, ready to get started.
All right.
Thank you for having me. Excited about having some conversations about these machines. Our experience, City of Durham is approximately 300,000 residents, 116 square miles. So we're definitely spread out. And with that comes the need to be creative on some of our applications. So go ahead and get the next slide, please. Okay, so for us, I'll do icebreaker. We're right down the road from Michael and just a short drive from Jake. Jake's just down the road. So right, Jake. So we look at the sustainability piece, but I also like to talk about mission capability. Because first and foremost, we want to supply vehicles that are mission capable, and if we can do that in a sustainable fashion, we are definitely committed. We've run the gamut of the side-by-side units from John Deere, Polaris, Kawasaki, gasoline units. We were some of the first in the area to have the GM cars. To some success. We ran the GMs. And so one thing we encourage and sort of my slide highlights is the elimination of costly assets. The life cycle cost of the side-by-sides was considerably cheaper than that of a comparable vehicle. We look at the application and try to come up with a good fit. And so some of our within the parks, our trails, things like that, some of our plant operations, and then if you have events such as you need public safety there to be able to be much more maneuverable within that. We use them as tools to increase our utilization because it goes into a different pool with a different set of requirements for utilization. The thresholds are much smaller than a light duty vehicle that's comparable. They're not gonna go 6,000 miles a year and meet utilization within our plant structure, say in our water utilities group. So they typically get used more. Improved capability from the units, to be able to do different things, put certain accessories, and I'll touch more on the accessories and accessorization of the machines for their mission. Sort of a Swiss Army knife of sorts. Off-road capability. We can take these in places and outfalls and things like that we normally would not want to take a pickup truck. And so rather than owning that four-wheel drive with all-terrain or mud-terrain type tire and those types of needs, we utilize these to access the inaccessible areas of our operation. And in that application, they're more rugged and more durable. So I had really good luck with them in those applications, and just a lot more versatile than a pickup truck or a sedan. And then the ability to add accessories as you need. And of course, there's no emissions and very little noise. So that's always good, especially in crowded areas. We have found that during events or in our parks, trails, it's nice to not have the engine running and the exhaust emissions or the odor of exhaust while you're working. So just some of the highlights that we've had our experience with. And then our challenges. Creature comfort. Michael touched on it, to trying to get the creature comforts that people expect out of a vehicle, out of these units. And so you really need to be able to know what your mission is, what your customer needs, and the things that go into what they do every day. Air condition, when it's hot outside and things like that. Here in the Southeast, we have days that are code red days, and with air quality and things. So you've got to take those into considerations as you utilize these. I have risk exposure because this unit was involved in an accident. We've had 2 serious accidents involving rollovers, and one was gasoline powered, one was this electric. So definitely got to have a policy in place to limit how they're utilized. Horseplay, we ran a lot of golf carts in some of these applications. These units much more robust, however, their performance is considerably better than a golf cart. So addressing, if it comes with seat belts, you're going to wear seat belts. That's the city policy. If it has a factory installed seat belt, you're going to wear it. So wearing your seat belt, and then it gets into trying to limit performance. And I want to talk about support for just a second. As we've all discussed, trying our local level on some of this ancillary equipment is not what you're going to get from Ford Motor Company or General Motors. And so as we had our first accident, the question came up, can we speed limit these? At a local level, it was indicated, no, that was not an option to speed limit our Rangers. So I ended up buying aftermarket software to modify the vehicle parameters. However, later on, it was found out that there are available options to speed limit your equipment and through Polaris. So oftentimes at a local level, when it comes to the electric units, and that's whether it's mowers, we've had some issues there. Finding someone that knows locally how to do the maintenance, that is really interested in doing the maintenance. So you definitely want to make sure as you pursue some of these that you got your support structure in place, but also to be able to write you a good specification on exactly what you want the machine to do, and if there's any safety concerns or anything, how to mitigate that. The battery life is definitely a consideration. Anything that has a lead acid battery, that lots of charge cycles, there's the battery maintenance component. We have converted 2 units so far of our Ranger EVs over to lithium iron phosphate batteries. There's you got to be careful of your charging. You can't use the charger that comes on the unit. It can be programmed, from what I understand, but you need the software. So we bought a standalone charger to maintain those lithium iron batteries. And I think we knocked about 300 pounds off the vehicle. So certainly our payload goes up. We've gotten really, really good feedback about the battery life on the units. So did some conversion, but from going forward, it looks like the market trend is lithium batteries. However, we're not going to buy anything that doesn't have that. And currently we are taking a look at the Greenworks. We've had really, really good luck with the Greenworks. So, but definitely finding out what your dealer's capabilities are to support your need, and operator training behavior. It's a really peppy, sporty vehicle. So got to get out in front of the curve. We unfortunately did not, and had a couple of serious injuries, life-altering injuries. One at our police firing range, and then one at one of our plants. So, and finally, accessories. Find out what you're trying to do, see what's available from the factory or from your OE's provider, but also your aftermarket. And one thing, we don't like to manufacture anything here in-house or fabricate, because then you become the manufacturer and the liabilities that go along with that. So we definitely steer clear of making anything. We want to buy it and it be approved to go on that vehicle. So just in a nutshell, our experience with the units, and we're pleased. They provided a lot of good service for us, and it's the direction we're going in fully as we start to age out our gasoline units. So I believe that's it.
I guess I'm up. So I think my stuff is going to be quite a bit more brief than the others, and I'll put one caveat right off the bat that that $250 a month operation cost for that Polaris is based on some notes I took when we first got the machine, getting an average of around 300 watt hours per mile of use. And I just went out and checked the machine, and I think the other guys using it, the meter said something like 1,300 watt hours per mile. So I think the efficiency can vary quite a lot. Now, I'll give you a little context to the farm we're on. So like John said, I'm the farm manager at a Southern Oregon Research and Extension Center. It's a little 80-acre, roughly 80-acre research farm with Oregon State University. We've mostly perennial crops, pears and wine grapes, some collaboration with some vegetable farmers. So we use this as just a farm rig. It doesn't really ever leave this property. Our farm is relatively flat. I don't have to worry so much about battery life as others do, because it's a relatively small operation. Every night it comes home and it parks in the barn and plugs in. That being said, we got our machine on October 31st of 23. The story I was told, we got these, Oregon State University got these from a nonprofit called Oregon Environmental Council, a nonprofit group trying to encourage farmers to go green in general. And so they hooked up with Polaris. And the story I got was that the first 4 machines that went out to the public came to Oregon State University and 3 other research stations. And they said, use them and tell us about it. And I took that to heart. I think in the first week or so, we took down some 30 to 40 foot Bradford pear trees, and I dragged them a half mile out to the burn pile with that thing. It didn't flinch. It's to sing its praises. It's immensely powerful. It used to be immensely fast. They did limit the acceleration, which, related to some troubles mentioned earlier. And our dealer, the last time it was in, it was a software upgrade. And so it is a little more gentle on the acceleration off the line. For most of our operations, we're not going fast. We're going slow and we're pulling heavy stuff. That cart there is probably about 2,000 pounds worth of grapes. And to unload those bins, I threw a strap around it and anchored those to the forklift and drove out from underneath it. So I don't know what kind of force that takes, but it, again, didn't flinch. So let's see. We've when we first got it, I was trying to do a pretty good job of keeping track of our, hours of use and power usage. And I was comparing it to a two-wheel drive Gator that we have. And a lot of these numbers, these estimates are based on me like Googling the fuel efficiency of a Gator. And so guessing that at 0.35 gallons an hour, our fuel cost at the time was like $3 a gallon. Our power cost at the time was 15 cents a kilowatt hour. And twice a year on the Gator, I do an $80 maintenance kit, oil, air filter, etc. We haven't had to do, there is no maintenance on that Polaris essentially, or at least not for several years. There's some Zerks to grease, and I haven't hit it yet, but a number of years in, you're supposed to change some coolant fluid and some other more significant things, but essentially you don't really have a maintenance bill like you would on a normal unit. They're really wonderful, and probably one of the biggest benefits that I have heard the guys and that I have felt using that machine is when you're driving around the farm, you can speak to the person sitting next to you. We have some old Kubotas that were donated to us from the local VA that are diesel units that are in rough shape. And you got to wear earmuffs just to sit in the thing. It's horrendous. Now, all of that being said, we have had a few troubles ourselves. We, about a year in, so let's see, I have this written down. So we got it on October 31st of 23. In late July of 24, it just quit driving. I was driving the unit and it just stopped rolling. No indication, took it to the shop, wound up being a bad, I forget what the thing is called, but something that helps prevent, runaway potential fire in the battery. So it basically severed the connection between the main battery and the drive motor. And so they got a new battery ordered from headquarters, got it in the unit. That one was also bad, sent that back, got another one, replaced that. We had it for about a year. And then last August, it happened again. We sent it in, they replaced the battery, still wouldn't drive. They replaced the main motor, it still wouldn't drive again. And then they replaced the main chassis wiring harness, and that seems to have solved it. So all of this was under warranty, and we got this unit as a donation to the station. So we haven't spent a dime on the thing. I also talked to the shop, and they said that out of the several units they've sold for the last couple of years since they came out, ours is the only one that has been this way. They haven't seen anyone else have to replace, maybe one person has replaced a battery. And besides that, none of these issues have come up for any other customers of theirs. Now, Medford isn't a particularly big place, so I don't know how many a lot of sales is, what kind of percentages they've got, but it sounds like we have an oddball. And like I said, when it works, it's fantastic. The biggest thing that's come up for us internally is when that warranty expires, if something like this happens, I got some numbers from our local shop, and that first replacement of the battery was would have been just over $9,000. And all the later work, the battery, harness, motor, that was just over 17,500. It was $17,682 it would have been. Now for us, a small station like we are, if that happened now and they weren't going to cover it, we'd park that unit out back. We wouldn't have the money to cover that. And that would just be the end of it. Maybe someday when those costs come down, we'd be able to invest more in having more of these things. But right now we're ecstatic to have basically free access to it. So I'm happy to answer any other questions if anybody has any or any prompts, but that's essentially what I've got to bring to the table.
Thank you so much, Jake, and Mike and John for your presentations as well. I think the important things to be aware of here is that all three of these gentlemen have experience really not on the bleeding edge, but certainly on the cutting edge of this technology, going back several years to when the manufacturers were really first putting these units out. And kind of in that vein, Jake, thanks so much for mentioning that your experience does seem to be an unusually unfortunate one with that one lemon unit. And I'd like to share, if I may, just a little bit more from the state of Oregon, as was emailed to me by Dr. Jackie Thorsness, who is the Chief Operating Officer for the College of Agricultural Sciences at Oregon State University. And so Jackie, she oversaw the receipt and deployment, the donation and deployment of all of these vehicles at the research stations. And just to touch briefly on it, if you'll bear with me, friends, I'll read from Hood River, Oregon Research Station. The report was, "Our vehicle has performed great, even when temperatures drop below freezing. This was the scenario I was most worried about, knowing that EVs sometimes perform very poorly under sub-zero conditions. The cost for the EV unit was significantly higher than a petrol gasoline-based unit, so the price point could be the deciding factor if we needed another unit in future." And then from Pendleton, Oregon, Agricultural Research Station, they said, "Our experience with the Polaris electric UTV has been very positive and could certainly benefit others exploring electric UTVs for agricultural research or land management. We found the technology to be reliable, efficient, and well suited to the tasks of maintaining research plots. We use it for simple transportation, but also to spray plots, for example. It's a solution we've continued to use. We're not actively considering additional electric UTV purchases based on our limited budget, but its performance and sustainability benefits are there." And I think I wanted to share that because, there's good and bad. And I think that that's our role as the Clean Tech Center, is convening these conversations where the good, the bad, and the ugly can all be discussed, and we're all going in with eyes wide open. The economics of electric drivetrains have already been proven in the light duty segment of highway vehicles. The numbers of vehicles that are being manufactured in the utility task vehicle use case, those are much, much smaller numbers. And so I imagine that the manufacturers are maybe taking some time to dial in really the best quality of manufacturing, avoiding defects and problems like this. And so that causes me to think more about, the problems that John Ferguson has highlighted, the speed limiting or governing issues, the safety of these vehicles, the education and training of the operators. But this has been an excellent conversation and kind of wide ranging. And so we do have one question that's been offered, and for webinar attendees, please feel free to type in questions. Oh, this comes from you, Mike. He asks, how does the cold weather affect battery life on your Kinetic, Jake?
For us, not at all. Now, I'll mention in Southern Oregon, it doesn't get as cold as it does at some of our other research stations. We usually have like a all-time yearly low of somewhere in the mid-teens. And there are years where we might get a number of nights like that, and the daytime highs will stay in the 20s. And the unit did fine. Again, we park ours in an enclosed barn with a concrete floor, and we aren't what I would call an extremely cold weather site. But like, you know, my colleagues up north mentioned, it's not, it seemed to be that it wasn't bad. I think it may have been from Hislop, or I'm sorry, Hood River. I remember hearing one of the guys mention a story of, in the middle of the winter, the first year, they hadn't touched the unit, or given it much thought, and they went out to get in one of the ATVs and it was too cold to start. They went out to get in one of the pickups and the battery was dead because it was too cold. And they hopped in the EV on a whim and it was fine. And I believe they get significantly colder temperatures than we do. So if you're, you know, not talking about somebody up in Maine, they're pretty durable. And I have been a little concerned about heat, although I've never had the unit fail on us because of it. We have occasionally had, you know, heat domes where we're in the 100 and teens for, you know, as a high for multiple days in a row. And it makes me apprehensive to run that unit out around in dry fields and pastures. But again, we didn't have any problems with it. It didn't flash any lights. It didn't start a fire. So, you know, it might just be my personal anxieties. It really, outside of these unusual issues that we had, it's really been reliable and consistent. And I would, side note, I would probably suspect that our original problem was the wiring harness that was the last thing they replaced and was maybe causing problems in other systems on the unit.
Yeah, that's certainly plausible. Mike has offered to elaborate a little bit more on UVA's utilization of these vehicles in snow removal. Mike, would you?
Yeah, thanks, John. So we have 50 of the UTVs that are the Kubota brands. And we have probably over half of them have snow plows and salt spreaders. So they're vital to all of our sidewalk clearing and our smaller parking lots and do a lot of cleanup work. And until there is a UTV that's electric that has like a battery tray that you can slide out and slide back in, we cannot afford to have electric side-by-sides or UTVs. We can't have them in the fleet because of how long it would take to charge them up. So until the battery technology changes and the charge time changes, we are tethered to ICE engine vehicles in this micromobility stage there. We don't have a very large area that we clear. It's only like 3 square miles, but we got a lot. If it snows, the students still need to go eat. They still have to leave their dorms. The sidewalks need to be cleared. We've had snow events that have taken, 2 days to clear. We just can't park our stuff for 3 or 8 hours for it to charge up and then come back out and use it again. I know that technology is coming where you unload the electric battery and load a new one in, but it's not there yet. So one of the ways we've addressed this is we've actually invited manufacturers on campus. So John Deere has been on grounds with their engineers. We've had Kubota come here with their engineers, and we've shown them our work case and told them, we don't necessarily need a 4-wheel drive for everything. There's plenty of places where a different unit than you're building would work in our application. So having those conversations earlier is important to help build out what you're trying to buy from these people. So if you haven't had that conversation yet, I encourage you to speak to your vendors there. And I'll make one more point also on the maintenance side. I think I spoke earlier to this, but brake maintenance on electrics is critical. Brake fluid it's hygroscopic in nature, so it tends to absorb moisture out of the air. And if you don't change your fluid regularly, you're going to experience some brake fade problems, and you'll have issues down the road. So thanks. Well, John, one more issue too, John. With our EVs that have battery heaters, we also experience failures when in a winter event, if they aren't plugged up, the battery will become discharged and you will not have any charge in it at all. We worked proactively to clear one lot of every vehicle so we could snow plow it first, parked everything in another auxiliary lot that did not have any infrastructure for EVs. And every one of those were dead. We went over there to try to move them. So hard lesson learned there. You're muted, John.
Yeah, there was a question on financial viability of electrical ATVs in cold weather if the energy consumption significantly increases. But I think that what I'm hearing, Mike, is that there's a practical consideration first and foremost, and so the financial would be a secondary consideration to that. Do you agree? And John Ferguson, do you have something to add in this vein about temperature sensitivity or?
So it's our experience that anything with a battery, extreme temperature swings are going to negatively impact performance of your battery. So, hot or cold, you're going to lose some efficiency there. So we have a relatively mild climate here. So we're sort of a best case scenario. Pretty hot in the summer, but for the most part, we see most of our problems, if we're going to have any, is during the summer months, with your batteries getting hot. So, and that's under heavy load application and things like that, and sometimes borderline misuse of the equipment.
Yeah. So another question had to do with kind of a different business model, a turnkey OpEx model, wherein all the costs are loaded into a kind of a transportation as a service or electrification as a service model. And I think that that's something that John Ferguson and Mike Duffy have maybe some learned thoughts on, given your broader experience with electrification and other use cases. Would you like to answer this question? Would that help eliminate adoption barriers and accelerate the uptake of electric vehicles?
For us, the problem that we're running into is the decentralization aspect to our fleet. So right now there's 39 different agencies at UVA that own vehicles, and 39 different agencies are trying to figure out how they're going to add their infrastructure. And if you can imagine those people aren't communicating on how this is going to look, you can imagine how it's just not going to work well going out. So to that point, yes, it would help to do that. But for right now, what everyone is doing, what we're doing is we're focusing on what's inside our fence and what we can control And that seems to be the best plan for the way we're working until there is a much broader conversation to get everybody in the room.
John Ferguson?
Yeah, Michael hit the nail on the head. So, as fleet, right? We're getting assets in, looking for opportunities. It's an organizational issue with infrastructure, and those types of things. So our sustainability group works really hard to, try to forecast where are we going in the future with, hey, what's an available option right now to replace this unit? Is there a viable electric alternative? And here's its anticipated life cycle. And so in 2 years from now, we're going to replace it with an EV and start trying to forecast where your EVs are going to wind up at. The smaller units, a little bit easier to keep them charged up on 120 volt, just AC current. But your level 2 is a little more challenging to have the infrastructure in place ahead of the vehicle showing up. And that's why we adopted the at-home charging concept, because it's just so much more economical to put in a residential level 2 than it is to put in a commercial level 2.
Yeah, and this is an area, I don't want to go too far off on the tangent, but I just want to highlight that the city of Durham really has been at the lead in this take-home vehicle EV charging with a policy, with all of the departments, including finance and insurance, weighing in. It's a very rigorous effort that they've been doing for the past year and a couple months, and so we hope to elevate that further. But folks who are curious about that can surely get in touch with John Ferguson. Question is, anyone else having issues like Ryan Crew, who asks where the local state motor registration regulatory body considers UTVs off-road vehicles, which are not permitted on roadways, and users must always wear a helmet. It has limited our ability to utilize UTVs. Any recommendations?
That's one of the things we have seen as people start to license razors and rangers in the state of North Carolina. An opportunity opened up that just like that in North Carolina. It was considered an off-road vehicle, and so you were not expected to operate on a roadway. So there is a licensing procedure. However, from our vantage point, we do not want these operating on a roadway just because of the inherent dangers that they haven't passed any crash standard testing and things like that. And so even when we had the gym cars that were rated and approved and tagged, we still kept them off public roadways, just from a safety, compliance component, that if you're involved in an accident, it's a lot like riding a motorcycle. You're not going to fare well, even if you're not at fault.
We've had the Office of Sustainability chime in, because the first thing that happened was the policy changed to get the golf carts off of our campus, because they didn't even have seatbelts in. So that was the first thing that changed. So policy helped to drive us away from them, and they're working to steer us toward LSVs, which are able to travel on 35-mile-an-hour roads. They're governed to 25 miles an hour, and they have turn signals and seat belts and mirrors and all that other stuff. On our 3 square miles, we have a roadway that the UTVs are allowed to travel on, and there's roads they're not allowed to travel on. But there is a difference between what we call a UTV is a motorized utility vehicle. That would be a Kubota or a Gator, and then an LSV. But that's driven by Virginia code as well too. And again, most of our stuff is usually off the side of the road and getting up into the grounds to where they're working on those buildings. It's not something designed for transporting people. It's not a people mover. It's actually getting materials and tools to a job site.
Yeah. So I'm noting that we're just about at the hour. However, this webinar was advertised to be a 90-minute session, so we'll keep going with Q&A for another 20 or 30 minutes. We do have a question here. Okay, this is from Oscar Bode. He'll reach out individually about the idea of funding level 2 and high level DC fast charging using off-grid power. Excuse me. A question for Mike and John. So, as both of your organizations have been working through good and bad experiences with these electric UTVs, but also more broadly, you're doing significant pilot effort, well, beyond pilot effort with electrifying other parts of your fleet. How are you approaching replacement cycles and asset tracking and standardizing specifications across departments and use cases?
I'll start out on that. So the first thing I always encourage people to do is to start measuring. If you don't measure what you're doing, you don't even know what to begin to ask for. So when you look at your replacement vehicle that you're getting ready to look at, how many miles did I drive last week, last month, last year? Where does it park? And then what is the infrastructure like in that area? Would it support another alternative fuel vehicle? UVA's goals are given to us from the top down, so that's really helpful, you know, being fossil fuel free and carbon free. We have these timelines on when to do that. So for us, electrification makes more sense than just going to another fuel that's going to, like propane or natural gas, CNG. We're focused on electrification as far as that's what we're looking to do for our all-field vehicles. So, but it starts with, in what we found to work for us has been telematics. So 100% of the vehicles which I run within the facilities fleet have telematics on them, as well as my UTVs. It's been helpful to help me find the one that was stolen. It's also been helpful to help with our plan. We have a matrix that we could invite people to fill out, where it gives them the quiz at that replacement time, just so it's not just a like-in-kind replacement, but perhaps your role has shifted in what you were doing 8 years ago or 10 years ago with that vehicle. So asking the questions when you sit down to make that replacement, are you using, would some other vehicle would be more ideal with you? Do you haul more people than you used to, or more cargo, big cargo? Could you go from a crew cab down to a single cab? So having that conversation to right size and right type the vehicle is really important for that as well too. And then working to find champions within each one of those groups to help pull that conversation along instead of you trying to push it along. Partnering with your Office of Sustainability, getting them involved with it as well too, to raise the awareness that you can use this electric vehicle in your application and it will work well for you. The last thing I'll bring up is we have a loaner pool that we offer to folks when something comes in for service. We work to try to give people an electric variant when theirs goes out for service, so that they can go ahead and get a taste and say, wow, this really is working well. I would have never thought this could have worked well for me. So that's some of the things that we do.
And I'll just piggyback on what Michael said. You know, for us forecasting, we do a 10-year replacement model. So for CIP replacement funds for our fleet, 1,900 in counting. It fluctuates for us, but knowing where your things, and I'm going to go back to at-home charging. If you know, we have vehicles go home every day, and the strongest concept, and it's endorsed by many of the manufacturers of these vehicles and equipment, is, you know, level 2 charging when the vehicle's not in use. And for us, that's where, and we're not, public safety is definitely on our radar for electrification. And part of that is they're one of our largest consumers of gasoline here in the city for us. So if 75% of their fleet goes home after each shift, then clearly where it's domiciled at is where you've got to start. So we're always looking ahead. You know, a lot of volatility in how vehicles used and what it's going to cost to maintain it, but life cycling the equipment. And then, you know, with the side by sides in particular, looking, here in North Carolina, we buy off typically co-ops and contracts. We get a really, really good price on the unit. So our return on our investment when we go to auction to move these units, they typically bring much better money than a lot of the things we were using in the past. It's a hot seller for us. So at the life cycle of the units, there's a lot of good across the board. And again, what we're looking at, we monitor. We're trying to shrink the fleet, and what I mean by that is not necessarily in numbers. And who doesn't want, you know, to shrink the fleet and get rid of underutilized equipment? But what we're trying to do is provide as capable but smaller units that are just as capable with smaller engines and things like that will still do the same amount of work, or no engine at all, to have the emissions reduction, because we do have some adopted carbon reduction goals, and anything that burns gasoline or diesel is on the table for us. So.
And I've got a follow-on question for you, John, but also a couple of questions stacked up, Jake. So thank you for bearing with us. I'll get to those in a moment. John, you had mentioned in our prep call that, and you alluded to it earlier in this presentation, that the deployment of these UTVs was very much driven by some concerns about underutilized vehicles at some locations, certain operational plants, water plant, drinking water, or maybe it was the sewer plant. Can you elaborate on that?
So sure, we had areas that you know, we must have a 4-wheel drive, needs to be an F-250, extended cab, and you start to ask the questions. You start to put in your replacement vehicle request or justification form, and you start to sit down with departments. Hey, what's your payload needs? What are you carrying? Bring the vehicle out that you currently have. Let us take some pictures. And so you start to realize you really have the opportunity to shrink vehicles. For us, utilization on the light duty application is 6,000 miles per year. So with that, the nugget, the golden nugget of the UTVs and side by sides is it doesn't fall under that utilization requirement. So it helped us, you know, shrink the vehicle. And you found that people at some of the plants didn't want to use the F-250. They didn't feel comfortable driving it. They were going in places that, you know, could be a tight fit, having to try to turn around and things like that, visibility. So the UTVs really filled a good void there. And people were happy to turn in vehicles. And we even did some of the twofer. Hey, you have these 2 vehicles over here you never use. We'll buy you a brand new Ranger, and you know, dial it up, as we call it, put doors on it, and a winch and a plow. So now you can plow snow at the plant. And so you found people that were willing to negotiate and turn in a couple of vehicles that were underutilized in the place of one more capable vehicle.
Yeah, good. Thank you. I was also really struck when you shared with us that many of the maintenance problems for those vehicles that are underutilized was due to silly things like fuel going bad because it's just sitting and not getting burned.
Right.
And other.
You'll definitely never have a tank of stale ethanol gasoline in an electric UTV. Never will happen. Never have gummed up carburetors or injectors or any of those things like you will and of course a gasoline powered vehicle is not sitting on a charger. So dead batteries, jump starts, things like that. So, and when you start getting in a jump starting vehicle, I've had more than one battery explosion, or fried electrical systems because of a cross connection between the two vehicles being jump started. So, a lot of considerations within the maintenance component of that, it saves you a lot of headaches.
Yeah. And after all, you want to keep folks running, keep the wheels turning.
Well, and that's for us, availability. You know, if these things don't they do require maintenance. I always say the caveat is the EVs they're not maintenance free. However, some of your maintenance activities are definitely reduced, and your service levels are extended based off going electric. So.
Yeah, and I'll say I was very intrigued to hear, John, you said that you've got a 10-year replacement cycle for all 1,900 vehicles in your fleet right now. And Mike, you chimed in on the text that yours is 10, 12, or 14 years based on the specific duty class. And I have familiarity with a municipality that has a 7-year replacement cycle for everything. And I have been speculating whether or not some of these really these vehicles that are being produced in very high numbers, and that's relating into much greater reliability of the vehicles. The F-150 Lightning comes to mind. I do wonder if we might be able to see extended life cycles out of those vehicles, 10, 12, 14 years, just simply due to fewer moving parts.
I'd agree with you on that too, John. Part of the reason for our splitting our replacement plan up is we, based on what we were seeing at the time of disposal. When I got here 9 years ago, we did not have we had a replacement plan. It was called run to failure, and it was when you were getting rid of stuff, it was either had caught on fire or had stopped running, and there was no money in it. Since we instituted our replacement plan, I've been able to generate $1.8 million in surplus sales of our vehicles. And the reason they're worth more money now is because we've been replacing them and maintaining them. So as you improve your replacement plan, your maintenance plan on your vehicles, we are seeing that we're going to be able to extend the lives of our vehicles due to the low mileage that we drive every year. So unlike a sales force where they're putting 12 or 15,000 miles on a car, we've sold vehicles here that have been in the fleet for 15 years that have got 30,000 miles on them.
Yep.
So the key though is going to be that they have to be maintained. If you don't maintain them, you might need to be on that 7-year plan.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Hey, John, and I want to touch on that. So when I say we have a 10-year plan, our 10-year plan is just securing the funds for replacement.
Okay.
And so and with that, we have a lot of different life cycle expectations. You know, for a frontline fire apparatus that's running around $1 million a truck now, we're at 7 years. We have police vehicles that idle a lot. They're on a 2-year schedule. So we're planning, you know, we're using the forecast to know how much money to ask for based off life cycle. But now we're looking at it because we know we need to ask for a little bit more if we're going the electric route.
Yeah.
And I saw one comment about a $100 standalone jump charger better than risking a $5,000 vehicle. That is 100% correct. However, our people in the field here in Durham, North Carolina, start out with the best intentions of using a set of jumper cables with no training. And we wind up with one vehicle that won't start and another vehicle that also won't start, but they don't tell us that the engine computer has been fried because they attempted a jump start. So, and so a lot of times there's some operator error involved with some of these things that really are steeped in good intentions, but unfortunately I wouldn't go to the water plant and try to make drinking water. So leave the maintenance operations to us, right? So thank you, iPhone, to everyone. That is a point where a jump box is cheap. However, when they need it, when they need it, it's missing. Yeah. So
Taken. All right, let's get back to Jake. Jake, get you back in the conversation here. So in your day-to-day farm work, you did mention that one of your first forays out with the new vehicle was to do a very high demanding job requiring a lot of torque to pull that tree. You downed a tree and then pulled it to its destination. Can you elaborate a little bit more about experience with torque and range and reliability?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's outside of these drive failure issues. It's been pretty reliable. The only other thing that it has ever done to cause concern is probably more often than you'd want to hear, but I'd say once a month, you turn it on and every single warning light comes on. And then you turn it off and you turn it on again and it's fine. And when we've taken it in for these actual problems, the guys in the shop say there aren't any extra codes. It's got to be just some bug. Like I said, with us getting the very first units, I think that we got the lemon and the one that they hadn't ironed out, and I'm suspicious that for whatever reason, it's got a screwy brain or nervous system or whatever an electric vehicle has that makes it tick. But when the Oregon Environmental Council got these machines for us and they first interacted with me and they said, we want you to test them so that you can give a real answer to the farmers who we want to convince to buy them. And I really, listened. So there's 3 or 4 of those trees we took down. They were probably, I don't know, over a foot in diameter at the base, 30, 40 feet long. And, I threw a chain around it and around the hitch and off I went. And it was, dragging that stump into the ground the whole way out. I had to come back and fix the road because I was being eager. Countless times like that. I will admit that, when we first got it, we found out that it could spin those big knobby tires for probably 40 feet, which we're not on pavement. We don't go on pavement. We're isolated to our little farm. And we also mandate with our small staff that we all attend a lot of equipment and ATV safety training. I was just looking at we're members of AgriSafe, which is an organization that puts out safety materials focused on agricultural operations. It really is immensely powerful. Typically that trailer would be pulled by one of our tractors, and the hitch on the tractor through is a 3-point lift, and you would actually undo that little chain that holds the bins in place and dump those bins out, drive out from under it. The fact that we were able to just throw a strap on it and do it with that thing was I have no idea what kind of force is required for that, but it was a lot. Typically we're for normal farm operations, if you weren't trying to like put the machine through its paces, you're really not doing a heck of a lot besides moving 1 or 2 people and some equipment. I had the guys love it because it's so quiet and comfortable. It really makes a difference. Like when I send the guys out to check irrigation, we've got 10 acres of trees that are running under tree micro sprinklers. and you got to put eyes on every single sprinkler to make sure it's functioning every time we run water. And so, you know, it was one or two people, you're just driving up and down every single row. And you're not listening to that damn diesel, or like in that smaller photo in there, when we were actually harvesting those grapes, what you can't see in the photo is on either side of those 2 rows of grapes, there's about 15 people picking those grapes, and they're passing the buckets over the row and dumping them in the bins. But they can all talk to each other while we're doing this. Normally, you know, I'm sitting in a 80-horse tractor in a cab just idling that whole time, because you need to be able to move when the crew moves. You need to be able to back up when the crew backs up, or if needed. And it's really fantastic. It's really a nice fit in our setting. The first winter we had it, we also had a major irrigation project where we ripped up 50% of our roads and we're replacing our main lines. So we had uh, a lot of very deeply trenched, muddy roads. I made a point to try and get stuck. I found the deepest, swampiest, soupiest pit on the farm, and I drove right into the middle of it and stopped. And I got the back tires to spin, and then I put it in 4-wheel drive and did nothing else, and it crept right out. It's uh, uh, if you were if you were driving around town or a campus or something, I would absolutely get different tires, get turf tires. Or certainly if you're on pavement, you don't need those things. But the way that machine is set up and for our operations, it's fantastic. In spraying, like my colleagues have used it for, um, you can put a little tank in the back. I think uh, the one like practical complaint, I wouldn't even call it complaint, the request I would have to Polaris would be to put a 110 outlet in the bed. It's a giant battery. Put a little inverter, make it not be able to run much, I guess, low amps or something, but just to be able to have an outlet would be a nice thing. But outside of that, we didn't. We're not going on long trail rides. We don't have a very big farm. We don't really worry about the battery. We're lucky to be in a relatively mild climate. So, like I said, we don't have super high heat and humidity, and we don't have really terribly low lows. Um, so it's been fantastic. Now, we didn't get nice doors in a cab. We got the dump bed and some roof racks and stuff, but that's what fit in the gift budget that we were given. And I didn't need a winch. If that thing ever got stuck, I'd just go get the forklift or the tractor and pick it up. So there wasn't really that need for us. I did hear one guy at the Polaris dealer when I was there at the shop mentioned that he had some colleagues up in Washington who had talked to some apple growers in that area, and their average farm size is probably more like 400 acres instead of ours, which is 50 to 100. And they were more concerned with range. Especially if you've got elevation. Our farm is very flat. If you've got two guys and a day's worth of equipment in the bed and you're going up and down checking 400 acres of irrigation, you might kill the battery. I don't know, in all of the work that we've ever done, I think the lowest we've gotten that battery is down to like 50%. And that's when we don't plug it in for a night or two in a row.
Wow.
So it's like non-issue. But it's a pretty specific setting that we're in. It's small. There's only a few people who ever operate it. We know that they're well trained. We know that the environment it's in, the terrain it's in, is not particularly demanding like some cold or hot weather places like me might be, or high elevation changes, that sort of thing. But you know, it's not an insignificant amount of weight to drag around, you know, doing that stuff. And again, outside of those few problems, every time you turn it on, it's ready to go. You know, there's no warm up time. It's not like, you know, you gotta worry about that sort of thing.
Jake, I'm glad you mentioned the harvest, because I recall from our prep call, you mentioned an unexpected complaint that you received was that the harvesters can't actually hear the vehicle coming, and
Oh
so
yeah.
it could be that they anticipated the harvest truck coming around so that they would have time to get over, and they could finish
There were some notes from the pickers that that they do use you know, are accustomed to the sound of a tractor, so they'll use that as a note. So if you got one guy who's dragging behind and moving too slow, or one that's getting too far ahead and moving too fast, they can hear the machine and hold back or catch up or what have you.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you that the mood on the crew when that thing is, when you're using that thing versus a tractor, is definitely a lot higher spirits, because everybody's, you know, chatting the whole time. You know, we're out there at dawn and work until it's done. You know, for us, it's a research farm. It's not a very big property. It's relatively quick, but these guys are, you know, dawn till dusk from we always say it's from the start of August to the end of October. Don't ask for any time off.
Mhm.
You know, that's when things are busiest, and it's yeah, there are some potential drawbacks.
Yeah, but also some morale boosts, huh?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Let me do a real quick lightning round question, gentlemen. So, Jake, you have expressed that the charging regime is every night 110 volts or regular level 1 charging.
Yep.
And Mike and John, how are y'all doing charging regime with these various electric UTVs?
Much smaller than I'm sure John is. We don't do any at-home charging at all. Every vehicle comes back to the complex at night, but we have 110-volt usage for everything except for the kinetic. And it has a level 2 charger that it uses. And I think it's about an 8-hour range or 8-hour time frame is what it chooses to charge up our stuff.
So for us, some of our operations are 24/7. So they utilize any downtime, you know, to keep the vehicle on the charger. Now, if it's domiciled in one place and does have some sort of scheduled downtime, the expectation is that's when you charge. Most are all 120-volt chargers. We do have some 240-volt chargers out there for some of our other equipment, but we don't have that for the UTVs yet.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm thinking, you know, in my work across the state and throughout the Southeast region and speaking with fleet managers, that there's probably, especially for smaller local governments, there's a lot more opportunities to do that level 1 charging overnight, which is so much less capital intensive. It's so much cheaper to buy an extension cord and go with the manufacturer's 110 or 120 volt charger. There is an interesting question that just came in. Has anyone been able to use these for any medium duty applications? For example, applications where you'd typically use an F-250 or F-350. He realizes they have limitations. He just wants to understand what their limit is.
Definitely no comparison in capacity to an F-250 or an F-350. That's where I get into knowing what your application is and plan accordingly. So yes, they have their limitations. They're definitely not going to replace a vehicle. You know, they have their applications. They're not going to replace an F-250 where you need an F-250. So where it does do well is places where you have an F-250 that you really don't need. And that's where, knowing what the mission is, knowing what, what are you taking with you? Are you going to pull a trailer? And one of the challenges here for us is a crew cab. Everyone wants a crew cab. But when you get a random resident call in and say, why is it I see one gentleman in the same place every day in a crew cab truck with just himself in it? Well, it's a misuse of city resources. So ultimately that's sort of the square peg in a round hole. And we are really, really big on, we're not going to make you change your mission or result in mission failure trying to shrink your vehicle. It's in the places where a lot of people, just legacy, they have things they really didn't need.
Yep. Well, that's that right sizing conversation again. Gentlemen, we've reached the end of our time, and I just want to again thank you all for sharing your time, your expertise, your experience with us. I want to thank everybody who attended and those who are going to watch this on a recording. These challenges of reducing tailpipe emissions are not easy. They're not straightforward, but it's always better when we can learn together from one another. And I'm also very grateful for April Smith and NAFA for their continued support for this webinar series. Unless there's anything else that's for the good of the order, I'll thank you all and give you a couple minutes back.
Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a great day.